And joining us now is Christine McCracken, Senior Analyst of Animal Protein at Rabo Agri Finance. And we're talking about an industry that we don't talk about a whole lot here on the program, and that's the poultry industry. And Christine, I wish you a happy new year. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you're doing well.
We are a little cold, but doing it healthy so far this year.
Well, that's important, being healthy to start off the new year. I think we could deal with a little bit of cold weather and just make sure we stay healthy. I would agree with that sentiment. Well, as I mentioned, we're talking the poultry industry, and I know a new report, the Global Poultry Quarterly for Quarter 1 2023 from Rabobank. And just to start us off, I think just in general, as we look at the state of the poultry industry here globally, what does the outlook show us? What are we seeing here as we start off the new year, Christine?
Well, it's really a tale of two cities. We've got obviously a very healthy supply of protein here in the US, but maybe globally a little bit of a shortfall. And that's really a reflection of some tough economic conditions for producers in some parts of the world. So just big losses driving lower production, but also the impact of bird flu in a lot of regions, especially Europe, impacting overall supplies of meat. So globally, we're a little short poultry. Here in the US, we have a little too much.
Well, you mentioned avian influenza, and I wonder, I know that's been an issue for much of 2022. It's been a past issue here around the world and here in the US. Would you say that's maybe the biggest factor to watch as we move into this new year? What are your thoughts with high path avian influenza and how it's impacting the poultry industry right now?
Well, it's been a devastating outbreak. You know, it started obviously about a year ago in February here in the U.S., but it's been spreading around the world, throughout Asia, Europe, really hard hit, and that's been a huge factor in 22, and it's being spread by wild birds. So there's very few kind of options for the industry in terms of dealing with that, aside from everyday biosecurity. Here in the US, a big issue for the layer and the turkey industries for sure. We're seeing that at the store. But for the broiler industry, it's primarily a trade issue. So if we get it in our flocks here on the broiler side, it really can be disruptive to our exports, and that's really what we're watching for 23. There hasn't been a big let up. We've still had cases through the winter. We had them all summer, which is unusual. Again, tied back to that migratory pattern in those wild birds that is just really tough to control. So a big issue for sure in 22, and we expect it to be an issue again in 23.
Well, you mentioned some of the tight supply and some of the issues overseas, Europe, Asia. But looking here at the U.S., I know the report it seems to be a bit optimistic. We'll say at least for maybe the second half of 2023 for the U.S. Can you talk about that? Explain that a little bit for us.
Sure. In terms of, when we think you'll start to see a slightly better domestic supply, we're really thinking about poultry having a very strong outlook, not just for supplies. Unfortunately, we're a little early. There's still plenty of pork and beef around. But when we think about how the year might progress, you know, you've talked on here about the big drop in beef supplies coming later in this year and into 24, 25. That's a real opportunity for the broiler industry. So as I think through the outlook for U.S. profitability and what might happen with markets, I think we'll get it back in balance mid-year. I think we just have a little too much chicken here short term, but I'm fairly optimistic in terms of the market prospects for chicken specifically in the second half, and for turkey and eggs to come back to kind of normal ranges when we think about the next holiday season. So optimistic, but there's a lot we don't know at this point.
Well, and you mentioned it there, and you mentioned it earlier as well, the prices at the grocery store for things like eggs, and we see just the competition between poultry, pork, beef, turkey, etc. at the meat case, I know that's something that is a talking point amongst a lot of consumers right now in the US. And some of it, I see the different social media posts or whatnot, or hear people at the store, the sticker shock that they see when they're going to say buy a dozen eggs and the price is double, triple what it was just a few months ago, Christine. It's really a bit of a sticker shock right now.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that is on a lag, right? So we had tight supplies of eggs going into the holiday baking season, and then we sold a lot of eggs. So we're tight short run, but the prices are already coming down. That's the good news, and you'll start to see that at the store, and that'll get passed along pretty quickly. Um, I don't necessarily see any big declines in overall prices, maybe until we get past the Easter holiday.
Mhm.
If you think through what we're seeing, in terms of demand for that holiday, but I think that I'm pretty optimistic that we'll kind of come back to normal as long as we don't continue to lose a lot of production.
Well, Christine, as you look at this report on the poultry industry here from Rabobank, anything else stand out to you that you want to mention that you guys found in that report here as we start off the year?
Yeah, I think that there's some interesting data points around trade global demand for chicken. If you think through global supplies of protein, not just here in the U.S., we're starting to see that decline in beef supply, but big declines in pork production in Europe. They were down almost 20% last year. China is obviously a big driver of global trade, and they're taking a record amount of poultry uh, into that country this year. Record exports from the U.S. In fact, they eat a lot of chicken paws, almost $1 billion worth of chicken paws. So, some things to be optimistic about when we think about poultry as a good, low cost protein, um, and how it might play in 2023. I think that there'll be a lot of support for the industry, and that helps everyone in the meat case if you have less available supplies domestically.
Well, definitely a lot of things to consider. I know folks can find more details online, research.rabobank.com. They can read through the full report. And with that, we appreciate the time. Christine McCracken with Rabo AgriFinance. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get you back on the show again soon.
Great to be with you. Thanks.